So I'm always getting asked about how I sow seeds, and I do have quite a lot of videos about it and a whole chapter in my ebook about sowing seeds. But I thought I would just refresh that content with a 3-part guide. So I'll start off with the actual sowing of the seeds, then I'll talk about the modules that I use to sow into, and then I'll talk about the different types of compost that I'm going to use. And yeah, so 3-part series. This is the first part, all about the actual process of sowing seeds. And if you want more details, do take a look at the ebook, because I'm not going to cover everything in this short series. So this is about how I choose how to actually sow the seeds. So here's an example of onions. I always sow my onions into module trays, and I multi-sow them so that there's between 3 and 9 onions in a module. If they're salad onions being sown in the spring or sort of February time, I tend to do 9 because they're going to grow when there's a lot of light around. If I'm sowing them at this time of year, or a little bit earlier, say July, I might do 6 because I want them as quickly as possible, because we're always short of salad onions in October, and then I might just increase them a little bit to sort of 7 or 8 as we go further on into the year. So I'm always varying the number that I sow in individual modules based on light conditions and speed of growth. As I say, if I want them to grow really fast, then I'll sow a small number. So in this tray, for example, you'll see I've got sort of 3 or 4 in this part of the tray, and I've got 5 or 6, maybe 7 sometimes in this part of the tray. And that's because I want these to come earlier, as early as possible, and then I want these to come later. And I've got, many more trays of the higher density sown, because they'll come ready all the way through winter and into spring. So I like multi-sowing. I think it's a really great technique, and you can play lots of games with it. So let's take a look at another example. So here's another example. These are Tokyo cross turnips, and in this case I've sown 3 seeds per module because we're heading into autumn. These won't be ready until sort of mid-autumn, and there won't be a lot of light around at that time, and so I don't want too many seeds per module. The ones that I've already got planted in the ground, I put 4 seeds per module, and I again will vary the number of seeds per module based on how confident I am that they will germinate quickly, and what the light levels are like and heat levels at the time of year. And again, at this end here, I've got a few less seeds per module because again I want these to come a little bit quicker than these, and the fewer seeds that you've got per module, the faster they will size up. So again, it's a great example. I'll do the same, exactly the same with radish. So next up I've got a tray of lamb's lettuce. Now lamb's lettuce are quite happy to be pricked out and replanted, but what I find with them is because they're such tiny seeds, they're so fiddly to sow, that I will over sow them in a tray, and then if any of them don't germinate, then I'll just prick out spares and use those to fill in any gaps. And I also do that with lettuce sometimes. But when you've got a lot of seeds, they're really cheap and they're really fiddly. This is the way I like to do it. So you can see here I've got loads of spares. So what I'll do, once I've got every gap filled, I've still got a few spares in here, so I'll just pull those spare seedlings rather, out to leave just 1 seed per module, like that. And so basically what I'm doing there is my spares are just pricked out from modules that have had more than 1 seed germinate in there. And I've just done that for 2 of the trays, so I've now got 3 full trays with no gaps in them. So with something like lettuce or brassicas, this is the way I like to do it. I will just set a module up, sprinkle a few seeds in each of the modules. I like to do it with separate cells for each different type. It stops me getting confused, and then I'll just prick them out from here into the appropriate module tray, and I'll cover the appropriate module trays in a separate video, but this is one of them. And yeah, so I really like this. I generally use this size, a 6-cell tray. I generally find I'm tending to sow 6 varieties of a lot of things. I haven't in this particular tray, but in lots of times I'm doing 6 different types of brassicas, 6 different types of lettuce. That gives me plenty of variability in my diet, and I also think diversity is the best way to ensure you always get a crop. You know, because if something gets mildew or root aphid or something like that, you know, there's another variety that will be resistant to that. So you'll always get a decent harvest, and it just makes life more interesting to have lots of variety. And again, so I'll just prick these out and pop them into a tray. So those, I think, are the main techniques that I'm using when I'm sowing. I often have a lot of seeds to sow, so I pre-prepare all of my trays. And in terms of the compost that I'm using, I'm always using Levington's advanced seed and modular compost, and I'll put a link to that in the video. I tend to get mine from the garden superstore. It's quite expensive to get it from there because it has to be delivered, and if you can find a local supplier that you can pick up, obviously it'll be a lot cheaper. But I tend to find that compost costs me about 2% of harvest value, so generally I don't worry about it, and I just like to buy the very best seed starting compost I can, and I find this Levington's Advanced Seed and Modular is the best. I don't buy it with sand. I think the sand is just if you're using it in a machine just to make it flow better, and obviously I'm not using machines to fill my module trays with compost, so I like just the standard. I've already showed you this tray, but this is kind of the way it will start out, like this. And so I have the variety name, or my shortcut for the variety name. Often the variety names are really long, so I just always choose a shortcut for each one. And then I write the batch number. So in my seed sowing database, every batch of seeds that I sow of a particular variety has a number. And this makes it really easy to keep track of when things germinated, when I planted them, when I started harvesting them, when I pulled them out of the ground, and all of that sort of thing, and share that information with you guys. Then I have the planting date, which obviously is in my seed sowing database, but often I don't want to have to go and look it up every time I want to know that. And then on the back I write the number that I get when I get a new seed packet. So every new seed packet that comes into the house, I give it a unique number, bring it in my database so I know which varieties of seeds I've got, which seed packets I've got, and I put that on the back. So if it doesn't germinate, for example, then I know that seed packet with that number on it needs thrown away. So that's the way that I label everything, and I get these labels from off Amazon. I'm not sure what the source is, but you can see in my Amazon store where I get them from. And yeah, so I think that is pretty much it, apart from individual seeds and how to sow them. And pretty much every seed, with very few exceptions, I sow about 1 centimetre deep. So some really big seeds like squash seeds or bean seeds or something like that, I might sow 2 centimetres, 3 centimetres deep. But lettuce, spinach, beetroot, brassicas, you know, all of those sort of common things, lamb's lettuce, miner's lettuce, you know, all those, just sow them 1 centimetre deep. I do not subscribe to this sow as deep as twice the depth of the seed and all that sort of palaver. You know, I think that is way too shallow for seeds, and they just tend to dry out when you do that, particularly the small seeds. So about 1 centimetre deep, which is basically, you know, that much of your finger. This fingernail, down to your fingernail deep, is how deep I tend to sow my seeds. So let's look at how I fill my seed trays. So sadly, I don't have a potting shed, I have a workshop, and in my workshop I have this little tray, and this is where all the seed sowing goes on. So I like, as I say, I'm starting with this Levington's F2 compost, and it's really nice and fine, so there's never any sieving that needs to go on. There's a few little lumps and things in it like that occasionally, but obviously those just break up really simply with your hand. So when I'm filling it, I'm just filling it by hand like this, and then when I get a corner here, I'm pressing down well with my fingers, refilling, pressing down again like that. So I want these module cells really full of compost, and the reason for that is seedlings often get stuck in these module trays for 30 days or so, so they tend to be starting to run out of nutrients a little bit, and so the more compost I can get in there, the better. The more compost in there, the more water it retains, and the more compost in there, the easier it is to get it out again from this module, and kind of squeeze it from the sides a little bit and then lift it out. That is one of the nice things about multi-sowing. Tend to have a lot more root mass, makes it easier to get the seedlings out of the trays. So that is how I fill them, and then when it comes to making a hole for seeds, I'm just pressing down about 1 centimetre with my finger. Obviously I haven't filled those, I'll press those down, but like that, about 1 centimetre deep, and I just drop the seeds in, just drop compost on top like that. So a really simple seed sowing process. When it comes to pricking out, I tend to just use the pen that I use to write my labels with, and just push that in and twist it around a little bit, push it in, twist it around a little bit, and I will use my finger if the modules are bigger, but for these small modules, this is a 40 cell tray, this is the smallest tray that I use. I find the pen is kind of ideal size for that. And then when it comes to actually pricking out, I kind of use this little bradawl. I just find it's nice and easy to hold, and you know, I've never damaged a seedling using this, even though, you know, it's not plastic, it's got a sharp end, all of that, but you know, it's just convenient, it's in the workshop, and so I always use this, and as I say, never lost a seedling, so works for me. Okay, next up will be a video all about the module trays that I'm using. So if you want more details on anything that I talked about in this video and all the other aspects of gardening, then I've got a free ebook. It's linked down below in the description, and yeah, take a read if you want and give me some feedback. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.